Welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be sharing with you 3 different pairs of socks that I've worked on, all using free patterns. I didn't think that socks would fill up an entire video, so I decided to combine all 3 of these into a single video. We'll start here. These are the Humber Socks. And this one is using Knit Picks Hawthorne yarn and the colorway Mount Scott. So it's sort of a purpley, grayish, green variegated yarn. I had originally purchased this for my mom, but then when I got it, I didn't think it was really her color scene, so I kept it for myself because it was very muted. And marginally successful in the sock because I do think that the variegation does sort of cover up some of that lace detail. So on this sock we do have the lace detail running down the entire front of the foot and then just the back of the ankle until you get to the ankle. And it uses a bunch of like yarn overs and knit 2 together, pass 1 over, so double stitch decreases to get this sort of lacework design. This is a heel flap and gusset construction. This is what is in the pattern and what I've continued to use, and it does have a slip stitched heel as well, which is my first time doing a slip stitched heel. I made these socks sort of ambidextrous in that they can be worn on either foot. They just have the traditional more rounded toe instead of the one that matches my more anatomical shape of my foot. So, and I did that because I didn't think there was like a necessarily good or bad side. So that was the Humber sock. The next one I made is the Hermione Everyday sock. And again, this is using Knit Picks Hawthorne in the color Conifer. So this is a dark sort of like tonal green colorway with little bits of lighter green in there as well. This one, I think that is successful. You can definitely see the textural differences between this area and then the bottom of the foot where you're just doing plain stockinette. So I think that it was successful in the sense that you do get to see that sort of texture even though you can't necessarily see what that texture is. I thought it kind of looked like avocado skin. So for this one, I've done 15 rows. This is again a cuff down sock. I've done 15 rows of the ribbing, 1x1 ribbing before moving into the textural design, which is a 4-row repeat. Really easy to memorize and something that you can do without looking at the pattern. Once you get down to the cuff, I did do the eye of partridge. Once you get down to the heel, I did an eye of partridge flap, which is what the pattern calls for, but I don't think you can necessarily see that eye of partridge sort of like diamond design in it because of the yarn. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. I might want to try that again if I'm using a more flat or monocolor yarn. There's also a little like garter edge to the heel flap, which has a nice detail before making that turn. The bottom of the foot is stockinette, but you do maintain that sort of textural design on the top of the foot. And again, I've done just a round toe on this one as well, so it can be worn on either foot. The last one I have to show is called the Friendship sock, and the Friendship sock has its name because you're supposed to, you and your friend are supposed to each buy a color of yarn and then you swap half of it so that you can each make a sock. So this uses 2 colors of yarn. I've used again, this is Knit Picks Hawthorne yarn in the colorway Poseidon and Cattail. Cattail was left over from my April cardigan, and this one was a newer purchase. But these are a color combination that I absolutely love. So this one I've done cuff down. I started with 20 rows of ribbing. The instructions are available for both cuff down and toe up based on what your preferences are. Moving down into it, there is a slight sort of like increased gusset that is given on the foot, and then the heel is done using a shadow wrap short row heel. This is the first one I've done, and then this is the second one. Obviously you can see that the shadow wrap was much more successful on my second sock, a little bit tighter, not as many holes. So I did get better on it, and it's something that I kind of want to use again in the future just to try it out. And then the rest of it is really just all done in stockinette with alternating rows of the 2 different colored yarns. So because you are carrying yarn down for the rows, you can see there's definitely jogs in this. So I designed them to be worn so that that sort of like jog is on the inside or like touching each other of your feet, and then the outside has a much more cleaner appearance with no jogs. They do in the pattern tell you to cut the yarn an awful lot. I don't think it's necessary. I ended up just carrying it down and twisting every couple sort of rows just to keep it from being like a really long float, but I think that worked really well. The first sock I made, I did do all of the cutting. They would have you cut cut here, cut here, cut here, cut here, cut here, and I just think that was unnecessary. Ended up having to do a lot more weaving in on this sock than I did on this one, because on this one I was just carrying it down and twisting when I needed to catch that float. Because these socks are intended to be worn on a specific foot because of that carry, I did go ahead and do the asymmetrical toe on this so it more closely matches my own foot, and that means that I always have them on the correct foot, and so that none of that carryover is showing or none of the jogs are showing when they're worn. So for mine, I do the increases mostly on the outside toe. This one is actually kept kind of straight and then increased very rapidly right here at the end. And that gives me a much better fit to my toe instead of the more traditional sort of perfectly symmetrical round shape. And so I think that these will actually last a little bit longer because I don't have that same sort of like big toe tension that I do with the traditional round shaped toe. I'm really happy with how these turned out. I think they look very sunny and bright and exactly what I like in my socks. I hope you've enjoyed this look at 3 free sock patterns, and I'll see everyone next time. Take care.